Now, we've got apologies, we do have some. One for the Mayor, and also Councillor Harpenter for early departure, Councillor Finlay for early departure. Are there any others? I think the Deputy Mayor also for early departure. I'll move those for a seconder. We'll go to Councillor Naylor and invite a vote.
Doesn't work. Financial.
And appreciate just a little bit of time taking the new system that we're all learning our way through. So.
Very good at respecting.
That is passed unanimously, 13 votes for, and that moves us on to some housekeeping. I'll just extend a welcome to everybody. We've got 2 hearings today, and I realise there's some submitters in our gallery, so welcome. Just want to explain to all that the meeting is being recorded and being live streamed onto the YouTube channel. The health and safety procedures are on the screen, and if there is an emergency, please depart the venue at the nearest fire exit. And assembly point is at the clock tower in Marae or Henade Square. Health and safety is smoking is prohibited in the council public entrance and the building itself. There's a defibrillator on the ground floor, and please report any near misses or incidences to one of our committee administrators. Any online participants, please just keep your cameras turned on and your microphones muted unless you're called to speak. Councillors in person, if you can select the option on your voting devices, which we've just done, so we'll pass that test. And councillors, we don't have any members online today, so it's and that's the basics of our housekeeping today. And now I'd like to go to item 3, which is notification of different additional items which we have done. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any? There being none, that will move us on to item 5, public comment. I don't believe we have any public comment today. Therefore, we'll move to item 6, which is the hearing of submissions for the interim speed management plan for 2023 school speed limits. I need to move 2 recommendations that the Strategy and Finance Committee hear submissions from presenters who indicated they wish to be heard in support of these submissions. And 2, that the committee note the procedures of the hearing of submissions as described in the procedure sheet. I'll move those as the chair and seconded Councillor Naylor. Open it up for any comment or debate. Otherwise, invite a vote.
What's the number 27 or something?
We've got 12 votes captured. 13. Is everyone's device showing the vote?
One does.
I think it was me, sorry.
Are you voting in favour?
Yes.
Okay. That's 13 votes for. Just in regards to the speaking time, for those that are here first time, there is a 10-minute allocation to your chance to present and speak any items in your submission. That includes questions from members. And please take that your submission has been read. But we'll go through our first 4 submitters are in person. The next one will be online, and the other 2 that are expected in the session are still to arrive. Just outline the process. We'll take those hearings as noted in order of the order paper, and then my intention is, while there's still one submitted for an afternoon speaking slot, I will take the officer's report, which is a summary of submissions report after the hearing this morning, and then we'll move through other business as required for members. But for the hearing, I'd now like to invite our first speaker forward, which is Chris Teo-Sherrell. Oh, right, so just press that button, we'll work out. Great. You're live.
Sure, thank you.
We're ready.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, thanks very much. I'm really pleased that council is really trying to improve the life of people of all ages living in the city. Your decision today regarding giving people the choice of how to move around by embarking on the projects in Patterson Street and Somerville Drive to make them safe and feel safe to ride and walk along are really positive steps. Speed limits are another piece of the puzzle of how to get more people walking or riding and to improve the quality of life for residents and reap the overall benefits of doing so. In my written submission, I commented along the proposed school speed limits. Today, I'll just focus on Cole Street School Safe Speed Zone, but I'm confident the ideas and the information I share with you will apply to most, if not all, of the other schools. The One Network framework is the overarching hierarchy of roads used nationally to bring consistency to our roading network. It characterises streets according to the degree of place and movement functions that they have. For example, the new road across the Tararua Range from the Manawatu to the Wairarapa will have an overwhelming movement function and is being built for high speed and limited access. To the other end of the spectrum, local streets like Ranford, Ada, Oxford, Morris, Milford, Carlo, and Phoenix have high place and access functions. Movement along them is intended to provide access to properties on the street and to providing walking and riding routes. On these streets, children play, people ride and walk, people try to speak, and neighbours interact. And so 30 kilometres per hour is the safe and appropriate speed for streets like those. In between, we have urban connected streets where the safe and appropriate speed limit is 40 kilometres per hour, where there is no median divider, or where the street passes through residential areas, or where there are high numbers of pedestrians and cyclists, or vulnerable users such as children and frail elderly. A relevant local example, of course, would be College Street. In paragraph 4 of my written submission, I said I counted pedestrian and cyclist numbers at various points along College Street. And if the slide, which is up on the screen, sorry, I can't see it with these glasses, but hopefully you can. I showed the number of pedestrians and cyclist movements of school-aged children and adults between 8 and 8:55 a.m. between the 16th and 24th of May this year for the various intersections, so College with Ranfurly and Union, College with Ada and Marn, College with Oxford, Morris, etc. You'll see an astounding number of people were out walking or riding. In light of these numbers and the observations I've made while collecting them, I've requested 4 things in relation to the College Street Safe Speed Zone, and I've detailed reasons for these in my written submission. Firstly, I ask you to set permanent 30-kilometre-per-hour speed limits on all the local streets in the vicinity of school to enable them to fulfil their access and police functions more fully. They are proposed for the southern side of the school, but for some odd reason, not the northern side, where actually there are probably more pedestrians and cyclists. This won't compromise their ability to be used as alternative routes from College or Ferguson are temporarily unable to be used, but it will make them safer for the children that live on them and who go down them on their way to and from school, as well as outside those times, and it will make it easier to build community on these streets. There are many children living on the streets attending College Street schools or other schools, and there is a high number of pedestrians and riders using them at various times of the day. Secondly, I've asked you to extend the length of the safe speed zone along College Street, because the number of children coming from and going beyond the current boundaries of the zone and the high total pedestrian and rider movements in both directions. It would be sensible to link an extended College Street School safer speed zone with an extended intermediate normal school safer speed zone along College Street, making a school cluster as has been done elsewhere in this review. Thirdly, I've asked you to extend the duration for which the lowest speed limit applies in the school zone, because of the number of children I saw on the street before and after the 8:15 to 8:45 a.m. period. These children may be actually at greater risk of harm than those travelling during the 8:15 or 45 a.m. period, when the lowest speed limit is currently applying. But those children may have no choice about travelling at 8 o'clock. Lastly, I've asked you to raise the pedestrian crossing outside College Street School, because it's a point of extreme danger currently. I'm relieved to say that the 2 near misses that I witnessed when I was out counting people walking and riding were actually misses. But the fact that I saw 2 in such a short time demonstrates the inadequacy of the current crossing design. NZTA is raising pedestrian crossings on State Highway 2 with all its heavy and light traffic between Featherston and Masterton as it goes through towns. There are 26 pedestrian crossings to raise along that stretch. It's currently done 1. So there is really no excuse for pedestrian crossings outside of schools in Palmerston North not being made as safe as they can be, and raising them is the most obvious and the lowest cost way of doing so. Finally, I want to emphasise paragraph 18 of my written submission. It was about where the responsibility lies for ensuring everyone gets home safely. I said adults driving vehicles have greater responsibility than children. But the greatest responsibility lies with the designers and the managers of our street space. That is this council. So I'm calling on all of you to shoulder that responsibility and make our streets safer for children going to and from school and all the other people walking, wheeling and riding. You can do this in part by making longer school safer speed zones, having the safer speed limits apply for longer periods when they are variable, implementing permanent safer speed limits on local streets such as Ranfurly, Ada, Oxford, Morris, etc., surrounding schools, since these are the streets which school children live and play at all times of the day on all days of the week, and also raising all pedestrian crossings near schools. Thank you very much, and I welcome any questions on what I've said this morning or on my written submission.
Chris? Councillor Wood, I'm just trying to get you across. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris. Just wanted to get an understanding of your view on permanent 30-kilometre speed limits and whether that applies just to the streets you mentioned, or if that's your view that all side streets identified in this plan should be permanently reduced to 30.
Yes, actually, I do think all side streets around the city, as I said, those are classified as local streets with the primary purpose is letting people get to their houses, for people to interact as neighbours, for children to play. It has so many other uses besides just moving through. It would really help to reduce the amount of rat running going. I think most people would, who are trying to get from A to B quickly, would prefer to go along a 50-kilometre road than a 30-kilometre road. But that's the idea. And yet it still allows vehicles to get if there's a need. And Farnborough North has a roading network, the grid network makes it ideally suited for alternative routes when the need really arises.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Chris. A couple of questions around the duration of those variable speed limits. Your case for College Street being 8 to 9, is it your view that that would be the case across other schools in the city?
More than likely, my own personal view is I think that all streets, all parts of all streets in the city between those hours of 8 to 9 and probably 2:45 to 3:45, in and out of school periods, would be best at a lower speed limit. The reason being that children don't all live within 0.4 kilometres of the school gate. They live beyond there, and people are probably a little more cautious and aware as they approach schools than further out. And so actually the danger is everywhere.
Thank you. So your position is 1 hour in the morning and 1 full hour in the afternoon?
I did not observe in the afternoon. I think just went out in the mornings. My observation was that I saw children walking on the street at 8 a.m. when I got there, and right up until 9 o'clock. The latter, in particular, were in a hurry, and that's especially when children are likely to make rash decisions.
Thank you.
Councillor Sibylla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris. I was just curious with the pedestrian count. I know pedestrians were your focus, but were the heavy freight movements during that time featured at all in your observations?
As I went out first and trialed it, and I saw a few, but the numbers were so low that I thought it was worrying about. And actually, raised pedestrian crossings, as I said, have been built on State Highway 2, which receives a lot of heavy vehicle movements. They can be designed to minimise any negative impacts on the load. They certainly do slow down the vehicles, but that is actually the idea.
Thank you. Thank you. There's no further questions, Chris. Thank you for taking the effort to do that summary data for that relevant school. But thank you very much for your submission and your time taken today.
Thanks a lot.
Now I'd like to call on our next presenter, David Lane. Welcome.
Your councillors, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. And I'm appearing as a resident in one of the areas that's affected by one of the full speed zones. So my comments primarily come from that perspective as a resident. However, just by way of background, I have worked for 45 years in traffic roles and transport roles throughout the country, working in traffic enforcement, transport policy, planning, traffic engineering and road safety promotion. So I do have some background and some understanding of what goes on in the work. I've spent a lot of time sitting on the side of the road, observing traffic, looking at driver behaviour, investigating crashes. So I do know a little bit about it. And one thing I have learned in all of that time is that it's not possible to simply put up a speed limit sign on the side of the road and expect drivers to comply with it. I wish that it were true, that it could happen, but unfortunately it's not. I'd like to deal with four major points in my submission. The first relates to the success of the variable speed zones and the school zones that have been established 10 years ago in Palmerston North. And I was involved in the implementation of that at the time I was working at this council. So I do have some background information on that. And I think it's been an overwhelming success. And I'd really like to see that program rolled out. I fully support variable speed zones outside schools. I think they have achieved results. In fact, the crash rates since they were implemented have fallen. I believe that it should be extended to more schools, and I'm fairly ambivalent on whether it's a 30-kilometre limit or a 40-kilometre limit. The key fact is that you need to reduce the speeds, and extending them will further reduce speeds and implement safety. The concern that I have, however, with the proposal that the council is considering is the permanent 30-kilometre speed limits across the network. And I have grave doubts that these can be justified. I think that applying permanent speed limits is not necessarily justified by evidence, and it will not necessarily lead to reduced crashes. Reducing speed limits on busy roads will tend to bunch the traffic up. What happens is faster traffic catches up with slower moving traffic, and they travel down the road in groups. I'm sure many of you will have observed it's far easier to cross a road when there is one speeding vehicle than trying to cross it when there are 20 vehicles going along in a group, all travelling at whatever speed. So bunching up the traffic doesn't necessarily reduce crash risk, and sometimes it actually increases them. Traffic speeds tend to reduce anyway as traffic density increases. And you already see this happening in major metropolitans. I'm not suggesting that will happen in Palmerston North yet, but there are times when traffic does bunch up around busier parts of the network. In major metros, it's quite common for mean speeds at peak times to be below 20 kilometres an hour. That does not necessarily mean, however, that those roads are safer or more conducive to walking and cycling. I'm concerned that compliance with 30-kilometre-an-hour speed limits also has parallels with speed limits at roadworks. For generations, it has been the case that 30 kilometres an hour is the standard speed limit used at roadwork sites. However, compliance with those 30-kilometre-an-hour limits is very variable. You have to have active measures in place, multitudes of cones to regulate the driver behaviour. Without these engineering measures, it simply isn't possible to keep drivers at speeds below 30 kilometres an hour. I'm concerned that 30-kilometre-an-hour permanent speed limits will just simply be ignored by residents, or there'll be low compliance without significant investment in engineering measures. Which brings me to my fourth area of concern. I believe the proposed policy will fail to achieve its objectives and will inevitably lead to call from the public for engineering measures to address what people see as a perceived failure of the policy. If drivers don't slow down to the required speed, there'll be a call for more speed calming measures, humps, chicanes, etc. There will be more complaints about speeding cars, and there will ultimately be a higher cost of operating the network. So I think you're at a decision point when you're considering these matters, and I'd like to set a challenge for councillors. What I'd like to ask you to do, if you feel that 30-kilometre-an-hour permanent speed limits can be justified, take your car and go to Hayara Kotati and drive from Hayara Kotati along Ditma Drive and along Riverdale, past Riverdale School in Slacks Road. That's a journey of about 1,500 metres. Drive it at 30 kilometres an hour and see how it feels. If you do it in less than 3 minutes, then you've been driving too fast. Don't drive at 34 or 38 or 42. Drive it at 30 kilometres an hour because you really need to feel. It's actually quite difficult when you've got a clear road ahead to keep your car at 30 kilometres an hour. And I would impress on you the need to think about this, because if you're not prepared to drive that street at 30 kilometres an hour, should you be making a rule that requires all drivers to be driving it at 30 kilometres an hour? Those rules will apply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I do ask you to think about this while you're setting this rule and making your decisions. I really think you need to judge it for what is reasonable for the public. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Councillor Hancock.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, David, for coming in, and thanks for the submission. My question really is just around your expertise in terms of road policing, and the question really is just around whether or not you've actually got some information for the survivability of pedestrian crashes 50 kilometres an hour versus 30 kilometres an hour.
Well, I think the evidence is unequivocal that the higher the speed is at the time of a crash, then the greater the chances of a negative outcome. So I don't have any objection to that evidence, which is one of the reasons why I support variable speed limits. They will apply at the times of the highest risk. However, it's far better to avoid a crash in the first place. And that's what speed zones are actually doing, and the evidence suggests it does. In the 10 years before variable speed zones were implemented at school times, there were 25 pedestrian accidents in Palmerston North that caused injury. In the last 10 years, that's dropped to 16, so quite a noticeable decrease in crashes since that. So avoiding crashes altogether is far better than trying to predict injury outcomes. I just have this concern about reducing the speed is only one part of the equation. If you change the density of traffic, if you make it more difficult to cross the road, it's not necessarily going to have the same reducing trend. And drivers will determine what's a safe speed, and most of them will comply willingly with the law. But if they see the law as unreasonable, they won't, in my experience.
Chair. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, David, for your submission. And I just wanted to ask a question, because I agree with you. I prefer we have variable throughout the whole network, but the issue that we encounter is the cost. To put in these variable speed zone signs across the entire thing, posting would cost millions of dollars. In your experience, are there other ways than the signs? Because you would have done this investigation, I assume, when variable speed was put in the first place. Do you have any views on how we overcome the cost challenge of having permit over having variable across this whole thing?
I think the cost question is going to be inevitable, because you won't succeed by simply sticking up a 30-kilometre-an-hour speed limit on the side of the road and expecting drivers to comply with it. And then your residents who see speeding drivers every day will be asking, you need to put in more measures. So whether you're going to spend money on putting humps and chicanes and other things in. I mean, Ditma Drive was treated 12, 13 years ago, and the speeds down there are very good, and the crash records are very good. We're talking about a whole new dimension to try and get it down to a lower speed. So whether you choose to spend money on variable speed signs or whether you choose to spend it on humps, if this policy goes through, you will be having to spend money on engineering measures. The law always used to require engineering measures for speed limits lower than 50 kilometres an hour. That was based on facts and evidence, and nothing has changed. They've changed it, but they haven't changed the evidentiary base that suggests these things are needed.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. That's all the time we have this morning. There were no other questions in the queue as it was, so the time was ideal. Thank you again for your submission today.
Thank you for hearing from me.
I'd now like to call on Rosalie Eckler. Welcome.
Good morning. I am representing a group of people in the other side of College Street School along Park Road, and I'm the spokesperson for 10 ratepayers and 12 properties. So we've had a collective of ideas, and that we've got two concerns and recommendations that I will go through. I've resided where I am in Park Road for over 30 years, and I've seen changes in traffic volumes and pedestrian traffic. From my property, I have a clear view across the area. We're at the end of Karaka Street and to the right where the pedestrian crossing is. My background is in quality management, training and compliance in the primary sector. I used to be a systems auditor, so if anything's going on down there, I don't miss it. But I don't just sit there and look. Our concerns are as follows. Number one, our concerns are the speed of traffic along Park Road, especially near or on the existing Kia crossing, which is, I think that's a correct term. The crossing is situated in the middle section of Fitzherbert Avenue and Victoria Avenue. It's right about in the middle, so that by the time some drivers reach the crossing, their foot has the pedal to the metal, and the speeds are horrendous along there at times. This activity can happen 24/7 with no observed patterns during the day and night. Races in the past or recently, at midnight or early hours in the morning, it's part of their race circuit, and yeah, they've got no regard for other people. My neighbour, who used to be into motorbikes and that, so he's pretty good on speed, estimated some day speeds and night speeds are in excess of 100 kilometres along there, and that's fair thing. And you only got to speak to the neighbours, and when we hear these vehicles go through, we just wonder when it's going to make contact with something, but so far it's been avoided. If the proposed speed reduction in this area is introduced, how will it be controlled and monitored? That's for the 30 kilometre 24/7 for the areas and the side streets that we've got. So we just wonder how that's going to be monitored. Most drivers appear to be courteous and patient, but there's always an element that has little or no regard for the safety of others. A speed reduction sign will not change their behaviour, and I think this has already been raised. Our number two concern is the traffic congestion on Karaka Street, which is at the back of College Street School and comes out. At the school drop-off and pick-up times, that's the busiest time, and wet weather compounds it. The exit of traffic from Karaka Street onto Park Road is of major concern to us due to delays on finding a gap in the traffic. I saw a vehicle pull out very quickly this morning and just missed an oncoming car. People take risks in getting onto Park Road, and at the time of writing this, I thought the pandemic may be contributing to an increase in school traffic, but yeah, it's in the report anyway. There's also an early childhood centre at 224 and 226 Park Road, which generates its own traffic and it's more staggered throughout the day, but does contribute to the volume of traffic. Our recommendations are, this is for number one, we would like to see the existing crossing changed to a raised platform pedestrian crossing to force drivers to reduce their speed down to the proposed 30 kilometres an hour. The platform would just have to be high enough to slow traffic but not affect the flow if that's possible. This would also be safer for children, parents, the general public, plus cyclists. And we've got quite a few elderly people that walk up and down Park Road with walkers and Zimmer frames and stuff. And also, we've got Ryder Cheshire down in Te Awaanga Street, and their route into town, they come up Anderson Street, Parata, and then up Etiac, and then along, and you get to know the people from there, and I see them using the existing pedestrian crossing quite a bit. Yeah, and that's their main route going into the city, into the CBD. Number 2, we suggest a vehicle keep clear painted grid be put at the entry point from Karaka Street onto Park Road, just on the single lane. I've actually witnessed people that are courteous stopping back further from the pedestrian crossing so that when the school patrol are operating the pedestrian crossing for people to cross, that they're leaving a gap there for other cars to get out of Karaka Street. So yeah, a vehicle keep clear would be, it's pretty well common sense, I would think. Yeah, so that's all I've got to contribute. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to express our views and concerns on the keep school children safe along Park Road. And yeah, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosalie. Open up if there are any questions from members. There isn't this time, Rosalie. A very clear submission. Thank you for coming in to speak to it today and representing that it was noted those 10 roadways.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to call Anne Strawbridge forward to present.
Good morning, everyone.
You just
Have I turned it on? My submission, although I did submit on several schools, my submission is really not about any particular school. It's about this policy in general. I don't believe that the speeds outside of schools or in the nearby streets should be lowered to 30 k's anywhere. It's not clear to me what the purpose of the 30 k limit is. Is it supposed to keep children safer? As in, is this policy about keeping children safer when they go into school? Is that, I couldn't quite figure that out when I made the submission. But I'm assuming that it is. So these speed limits are being set in many residential streets as well as on more main routes. Just because there's a school somewhere nearby, are you assuming then, is this law assuming then that there will be lots of children on footpaths around schools and on nearby residential streets? Are we assuming that they're going to be on the streets between 9 and 3 when children are actually in school? Are they going to be on the streets at all times of the day and night? That if they are there, cars are going to hit them, or they're going to walk into the street and get hit by cars. What is the rationale for making cars drive at 30 k's per hour all of the time? I can't quite see it. Of the schools that I did submit about, only one reported 2 incidents. It did not say that these incidents were related to children coming out of schools or that they were children at all. So I kind of presumed that they were general accidents. I may be wrong about that. The other schools, there were none. There were no incidents. In almost all the schools, the report stated that the average speed was already less than 30 k's per hour. If that's the case, then surely the current rules that we have are already sufficient for purpose. People are already driving at a speed that seems to fit the area that they're in. It's my observation that the vast majority of drivers in Palmerston North, not all of them obviously, but most drive reasonably considerately and reasonably respectfully. What are we fixing or improving by imposing large areas of forced 30 k per hour speed limits? I suspect nothing at all. Most of us know that we go 100 out on the open road and 50 in built-up areas. That's been a general thing. But our surroundings tell us that it's safer to drive at 100 outside on the open road because there's nothing much else around besides cars. And in town, where there's lots of buildings, pedestrians, cyclists, etc., we go slower. It just makes sense. It feels right. It seems normal, and so we tend to do that anyway. But when we impose a 30k limit for no obvious other reason than that I turned a corner and suddenly now I'm in a 30k zone, I don't really think drivers are going to see it. I don't think that they are trying to do the wrong thing. I just don't think they're going to see it. I don't think they're going to care about watching to see if their speed limit is changing. And I think that the main effect of that would be to make good drivers accidental and unknowing law breakers or possibly other reasons. We'll come to that. My main concern is that drivers are going to be annoyed. They're going to hate to be made to do something that doesn't make sense. I'm talking about things like driving at 30 k's along a residential street at 10 o'clock at night when nobody's out just because there is a school 2 streets over. Driving at 30 k's past a school when all the kids are in school. Not needing to choose to slow down when there are lots of kids exiting school because the law has already made that choice. I don't have to think about it. I just have to follow the law. I just have to blindly and dumbly drive along, watching the side of the road to see whether I should be driving at 30 or 40 or 50. I would rather be watching the road and looking for kids on the side, for parked cars, for someone in a car that's getting out. Those, to me, are the things I should be focusing on, not whether there's a speed limit on the side of the road that I need to watch for. This is my biggest fear, when we micromanage everyone else's behaviour, we are saying that we don't think they can be trusted to do the right thing, that they can't think for themselves. There's considerable risk that people just decide to stop driving and drive kind of zombie-like. I don't think that's very safe. Or they start driving more aggressively to get past slow drivers, to get places on time, or just because they're fed up. That's not safe either. Or they just decide that the laws are stupid, they ignore them, and they just accept that they're breaking the law and they don't really care. I don't think that's helpful either. The risk here is that a lower speed limit for no apparent reason may lead ordinary good people towards thinking that laws are stupid. Laws are necessary for the good order of our society. We live together in a big group of people in a city by the common goodwill of everybody who follows the laws. If our laws don't seem sensible, if they seem stupid, then I think we've made everyone less safe, not more safe. Occasionally there are bad drivers who are risky and they are dangerous, and they have reasons for that probably a sign on the side of the road is not going to change. These drivers will always be pushing the limits, they'll always be potentially risky, and I don't think a speed limit is going to stop them from being dangerous. This is what I do think, though, we could do. Probably not you, but Waka Kotahi. Just after I got my driver's licence when I was 16, I attended a defensive driving course, which I think travelled around schools and presented to the senior students. I still remember many of the things I learned at that course. That's amazing because I've forgotten a lot. And I still practice those things in my driving. One of the things that I learned was to always be scanning the streets and roads as I drove along, looking for things that had the potential to affect what I was doing. For example, I may see a couple of young kids up ahead on the street. They're falling around. So I know it's a possibility that one may suddenly dart into the road in front of my car. I then should drive defensively by slowing down a little and staying a bit further away from the curb, just in case they dart out into the road. If everyone drove actively and defensively like this, it would surely be safe around schools and on the roads for everyone at all times. It seems to me that defensive driving courses should be reinstated. Maybe they could be part of getting a driver's licence. They could be taken around all high schools to senior students. As well, attendance at a course could be imposed on those who actually get speeding fines or break the road rules. Waka Kotahi could be responsible for running these courses instead of taking what I consider to be the easy way out by focusing on lowering speed limits. I understand that you have been instructed by Waka Kotahi to put limits in place. I'm assuming that that's right. So to lower speed limits when people are already driving sensibly is like punishing them. PNCC should tell Waka Kotahi that current rules already work and should not make any changes to the speed limits around schools.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. I'll call on Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, for your submission. I'm wondering, would you support variable speed limits around schools, or is it any reduction to the current speed limits that you oppose?
Variable meaning like 40 k's at certain times, or
Just, yes, at the sort of beginning and end of the school day.
I feel like people tend to slow down when schools are busy. There's lots of cars and kids coming out. People tend to slow down anyway. But yeah, I don't mind that. It's the permanence that 24/7 that bothers me most. Yeah, I'm not against that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
That's what they're.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Em. Similar to Councillor Johnson, just wanted to canvass your views on other options and wondered if you have any views around the kind of raised platforms and other things that are sometimes put outside schools to encourage.
They do have the effect of slowing people down in this place where it's probably safer, like I think outside of a school gate in an area where children come out and probably tend to be gathered together before they disperse. I think that's perfectly sensible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Andy. There's no further questions in the queue. Thank you for being here today to speak to your submission. Our next presenter is an online submitter, so we'll just take one moment to bring our submitter in, which is Troy Ducksworth from Titatia School. Good morning, Troy. Welcome.
Good morning, Vaughan. How do you do?
Good, thank you. We're in the middle of submissions. I understand you've been listening in. So
Yes.
the floor is yours now. You would have heard that you have 10 minutes to present, and that includes questions. And we can hear you, and so the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Morena koutou. Ko Troy Duckworth taku ingoa. Ko autu tumuaki o te tia. I'm Troy. I'm the principal at Tutatia School here in Palmerston North. I've got a bit of feedback. Is that bothering people?
No, you're coming through quite clearly here, so
Perfect.
that's not too strict.
Okay. I'll just deal with it. Hey, look, all I'm trying to do is just support the case that you guys are putting forward of lowering the speed limit along Old West Road from the 100 to the proposed 60. Completely endorse it from a standpoint of keeping the community safe here. We're a little semi-rural school of 160 children, and as you can imagine, pick-up and drop-off time is outside every school in New Zealand. It's pretty hectic at the 3 o'clock time, and all I would just like to do is just support your guys' claims to do this. We have quite a narrow corner here where our slip road comes off Old West Road to where our school is, and I just know that you know, the community have expressed to me that it's something that we need to look at lowering, and obviously when this submission came out, I was completely supportive of this. What I'd love to see happen is I've listened to some of the submissions here today and understand that for some residents and people around schools, having a permanent 60-kilometre sign or 30-kilometre sign isn't achievable. People don't follow that, but just something that alerts people to lower during those hours. I'd love to create a safe environment for our tamariki to be able to cycle to school. At the current, all of our kids, bar one, who lives directly across from the school, have to be dropped off to school. So I can't promote our children being active walking to school and cycling to school, just given that the road being 100k zone right outside our school is just not safe. And also for parents, during the overflow, we don't have enough parking by our school to accommodate. So parents are forced to park on the side of the road, which is a 100k zone, and you get milk tankers and massive trucks zooming through. It's pretty obvious that they avoid Tennant Road, which is the other road on the way out towards Linton, which is an 80k zone. If, in my opinion, and what the community has expressed to me, Tennant Drive is a much safer, wider road to drive on, and it is 80k's, yet our road is narrow, it has lots of sharp bends, and it's 100. So I'm just, I guess, speaking on behalf of my community here, just to support what you guys are doing, in the hope that we can just raise awareness about just dropping that limit during those school hours. I guess that's pretty much all my points. So thank you for your time. Hoping that I've managed to get it across to you guys.
Troy, I understand you weren't able to hear us because the system was on mute, so we're going to repeat the question. You won't be disadvantaged at any time. I could see you looking frantically, but that your end was actually our end, so just recommence with the question. Councillor Hancock, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Troy, for your submission. I'll just, can you just give us an understanding of how long you have been a principal at Turitea School? Do you have any anecdotes in terms of the unsafeness of that piece of road for the school community? And do you have a view in terms of the distance either side of the entrance of your school that we should think about for 60km/h limit? Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Kilda, thank you for your question. So I took over here as the principal at the start of 2020. So I took over from Smoothie, who was the principal here for 21 years. In her our little exchange from one principal to the next, she mentioned about parking, and she had no solution. She tried multiple things. So I guess I'm just trying to continue on the mahi that she had left for me to try and do to help. So hope that answers that question. I remember you mentioned about where I see the limit. So currently we've got a school sign, which I don't know the exact legal things as to how far it needs to be, but I'd assume it's maybe 200 metres from where the turn off is off our slip road. I imagine 60 kilometres it would be from there, and then as it goes down the hill past our school towards where it connects up to Tennant Drive, just it goes down a gully, and I'd say at the base of that would probably be as it's coming up the hill, that would be the time where it needs to change, in my opinion, to the 60 kilometre rating, just because you can imagine you've got cars coming up the hill cars coming down the hill, you've got cars trying to turn in on the slip road, and then you've got cars coming up the hill trying to turn into the slip road. So potentially you've got 4 lanes of traffic. If you imagine a perfect storm of 4 being all in one moment in time, that could be catastrophic. So I'm just trying to limit that happening. Although it hasn't happened, I don't really want it to happen on my watch. I just think that it's something that needs to be looked at, please. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Troy. There's no further questions in the queue. That was a very clear submission and you made points equally as clear. Thank you for tuning in today. There's, you feel welcome to stay for the summary report if you wish to.
Yep. Thank you very much.
As an update, our next submitter is called in unwell, and the following submitter has been noted as may not show. And notwithstanding, we have another confirmed submitter for the afternoon at 1:45. I'm going to call on our officer to present the summary of submissions report, interim speed management plan, school speed limits, and invite our senior policy analyst, Peter Rich, to present this report. You're on.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite prepared to report as read. Purpose of this meeting is simply to present a very brief summary of the submissions that we received. 1978, so it's a good turnout in the community. And we've heard some oral submissions today. The next step in the process will be to present a deliberations report. This will provide the analysis of the written and oral submissions that we've received, with recommendations for any changes that we may want to make to the proposals for school speed limits. Happy to take questions, but noting that our advice on the submissions that we've received won't be presented until September.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Peter. I just note that in table 1, we've got a very black and white sort of support proposed, not sure. It seems from the submissions we've heard this morning that people's views might be a bit more nuanced around there might be people that oppose the permanent speed limits who would support a variable speed limit. And how would we be able to get that summarised and to understand people's positions on that? Because it seemed to me it isn't as clear cut as support opposed.
You're absolutely right, Councillor. It's never as straightforward as support or opposed. The purpose of that table wasn't intended to say it was a clear cut support or opposed for any particular proposal. The number of submissions we received meant it wasn't possible to provide that fully nuanced summary. When we present the report in September, we will have that full analysis of all the submissions, and we will be able to identify the extent to which the support was conditional, or which the opposition may be dependent on other factors. So that was for the September report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Call on Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Peter, for the report. A couple of questions. Some submissions have raised matters beyond speed limits and raised crossings as an example. How would those aspects of those submissions be responded to?
There is possibly some potential with the provisions and proposals to include recommendations around additional treatments, but that would have to be managed within budgets that we already have. We'll note that any additional treatments outside that budget would occur currently with speed limit change. So, for instance, if we were to identify that raised platforms in a number of areas that are required, but we have no budget to do that in the current most financial year. We could indicate that will happen at a later date. And it is possible for the speed limit proposal to come into effect at a later date as well. So while we have indicated that these will come into effect by 30 June 2024, there is a possibility for it to be deferred, as it were, to occur at a later date.
The thing I guess I'm trying to pick up is in terms of the analysis and report back in September, will we get the digest of information around requests to raise crossings as well as the views around?
As much as possible, given the time being available, as you'll be aware, some of the proposals could require more detailed investigation. I guess the level of analysis we expect to present would be if a proposed change to a speed limit requires an infrastructure intervention, we would note that, and that would naturally influence our recommendations. But where there may be the possibility for a speed limit change without social treatment, of course, that could go forward.
Thanks for clarifying that. Second question is just around submitters' communication from council back to submitters. I assume they've all gotten kind of an automated acknowledgement that their submission was received. Is that the case?
Yeah, so we notify the submitters of the receipt of their submission and the hearings which have been held today. The next report back to submitters will be once the council has made their decision, and we'll notify them of the decisions that the council has made, as well as any changes that may have been suggested by submitters that we haven't recommended.
Great, thank you. Finally, just wanted to understand the agenda's got about 40 pages of social media commentary that was as a result of the engagement, not as a result of the consultation per se. Is there any intent there about analysis of that information in the September report?
Yeah, so the purpose of our analysis is always to understand community views. So this is not just written submissions, but the views that we've been supposed to do, and the social media engagement is part of that. Whether that analysis takes the same form as the submissions, I can't speculate at this point, but we are taking that all into account.
Thank you. So I guess to be clear on that, then where in next steps the report only refers to submissions, there will also be some analysis of the engagement results in terms of social media commentary.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on my question that Councillor Barrett brought through, which was around, I guess, suggestions that fall outside the scope of what this plan is. So, for example, one of our suggestions today was a vehicle clear grip at the entry point of Carricker Street and Park Road. How would we as councillors best go about capturing that on something like that? Is that something that we leave in your hands? Would you like us to take note of those ideas as we bring through these submissions and raise them in a different forum?
So the way we would approach that would be going through the submissions, the written and oral submissions. We would take account of those suggestions from submitters. What we would likely do is make a recommendation to members on the whole proposal for each school. That could include infrastructure treatment, or it could include a recommendation to not make that change at this time. If it's anything above and beyond that, then councils would like us to do the presentation.
In terms of what contains funding, I know that provided for that potentially often provide some funding on establishing these speed zones. Does that extend to engineering changes, or is it exclusively for the installation of signs, other informative measures, or would it raise crossing, for example, be something that we could access under the funding for this one?
I can't answer that question in detail. I need to check with our divisions.
No trouble. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Zebulon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Peter. In the submissions and on the Facebook comments, a number of other streets were specifically identified as sensible to be included. Is there any scope for that, those streets to be collated and examined as part of the next report?
Yes, so we will look at all the suggestions made by submitters. One of the things we always have to consider when we present recommendations back to the committee is the extent to which changes to the proposal to different or additional submissions. So there is a bit of a balancing act there in terms of how far beyond the proposal we can go. But where there may be some side roads that may have been missed off, then that may be an option to include those.
Thank you very much. Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, Mr Chair. Thanks, Peter. Just a couple of questions. One's around, will the next report bring in the full costings of what it will cost to make the changes?
Yes.
So every change that you want to propose will be in the next report?
Yeah, so the next report will have an implementation plan, what's required to bring these elements into effect, and then we'll have our budget for that.
Okay, good. My next question is around, will it also, next report, have a status quo option?
By status quo, do you mean make no changes at all? Under the current rule, we're required to have a minimum of 40% of schools covered by a slower speed limit, and our current status quo would comply with that. So I wouldn't say that we would have a no change at all proposal, but there is the option to have a reduced scope. We would be making a recommendation based on the submissions we've received, and there may be an option potentially, once we go through the submissions, to come back with a reduced scope proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you. I might just include a couple of questions too on the implementation report. It was decided to go with some very variable speed limits. I understand signage is more expensive and therefore may not extend budgets to implement a whole list of schools. Has there been any consideration around, or will there be any consideration around the priority of schools to implement, to meet at least the minimum requirement, and fulfill within budgets available?
That's a good question. So one of the challenges for us is how we strike the right balance. So the proposal that we sent out to the community was for all schools to be included, and that was within the budget that we had set aside for this, which included the funding requirement. Having now received the feedback from the community, one possibility is that we reduce the scope and increase the amount of money that's being spent in those areas to do things like additional infrastructure treatment, or to increase the number of variable speed limit signs, and spread the money in a different way. Naturally, that will fall alongside a prioritisation basis, looking at schools that perhaps have a higher need. For those decisions in terms of balancing those priorities and criteria, that hasn't happened yet. So we're waiting to hear the submissions before we make further recommendations.
I just perhaps follow on with that line of questioning around would you expect that there would need to be some sort of prioritisation proposed if members thought a variable speed limit was more appropriate considering all submissions and hearings today? How would you go about that? Are we expecting that to be part of that report, or would that be a subsequent that it's called upon?
At this stage, the expectation is the report will be coming back on the 20th of September. That means the report basically has to be reviewed by the end of this month. So we have a month to go through the process. The reason we set those timeframes is so that we can have the final speed management plan presented to Block Take certification, which allows us then to bring it into effect and so it's into effect by 30 June 2024. The reason why I lay out that timeframe is because the alternative would be to bring back the report to the members in September that doesn't propose final plan for adoption, but might pose further questions for correction from members. But to do that with delay implementation, there are other consequences to that. So one of the questions that we will have to address as officers is whether there is a need for further direction from members, or we feel we can make a strong recommendation based on the submissions we've already received. At this stage, that's our plan, so we expect the submissions have given us a clear direction. If we feel that's not the case, we come back to the direction.
Thank you, Peter. There's no further questions from the queue. Thank you for presenting this report. I'll move the recommendation that the committee receive the memorandum entitled Some Real Submissions and Speed Management Plan. Oh, sorry, Peter. Sorry, I didn't capture that. We do have one final question.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry to jump in last minute. I just
That's fine.
quite getting answer to your question, so I'll
Please do. Sorry, Peter.
sorry.
my bad.
Sorry, I tried to jump on as quick as I could. So I just want to clarify, will variable across the whole network be an option that is presented to us at your next report?
I guess the reason why possibly my answer wasn't as clear as that light is there are a significant number of factors to manage with this proposal. And when you have that many factors to consider, the increasing number of options that we present to members make the clarity of the report very difficult. So that's why I'm not saying there is going to be 12 different options, because that would just be very to manage. If there is a clear direction through the submissions that we should explore various levels across the city, that would be something that we may bring forward. But I can't speak to whether that would be a proposal at this stage.
Okay, so my concerns with your timeline, that as councillors, if we chose at that stage to go with a variable cost network, that would then mean we'd have to spend another month or two preparing, which would push us outside of the ability to get funding. So I'm asking now, given the votes that we've had leading up to this, that we're quite close around the option from permanent or variable, given the submission that we've heard today, would it be for the benefit of your team for us to indicate in some way that we would like to see an option where it's all permanent and an option where it's all variable, and what the costs are associated with that? Otherwise, it is the answer we can do, which I'm not saying it will be, and we end up pushing the timeline further and further down the road, and we might miss our opportunity for funding.
Trying to think of this way to respond to that one. I guess it's entirely with the committee is free to make any recommendations that it wants to make. What I would say is that our approach these consultation processes is to work through the information as it's provided by the submissions. A further direction from the committee to include a particular option, that's fine. If that's what you want us to do, then we can go away and do that. My concern is that increasing the number of options will increase the complexity of the analysis.
So would you like us to, if you want us to provide that direction, would you like us to do that now on this forum?
I think that would be perfectly appropriate.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, okay, then
I'll come back. I'll come back to you, Councillor Wood. Just, I'm just moving the recommendations in the report, and I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Naylor, and the floor is yours, Councillor Wood. Is there enough time to? I'll give it to yours. Peter, that's no further questions. Thank you again for your report. I'll give you a moment to end that. I'll give you the floor to read it and then you can speak to it.
thank you, Mr. Chair. That the report in September include the cost adoption of variable speed limits across the entire proposed network.
And call for a seconder.
My second is Councillor Finlay.
Do you want to speak to that?
Very quickly. I'll just briefly say, look, I'm not saying necessarily that's the option that we as councils will go for, but I feel like there's an appetite in the room for us to at least look at that, acknowledging that there's going to be a significantly increased cost if we were to do variable speed limits across the whole network, and that we can't make an informed decision come September on whether or not we should go ahead with the proposed permanent 30-kilometre network plan if we don't know what the cost is of the alternative option. When we put forward this proposed consultation, I would call this a close vote, might be 8 to 7, to go with a permanent speed limit out to the public. So at that stage, we indicated or as came by and show that there was an appetite for variable across the network. And so I think it would be very beneficial for us in the spirit of decision making to have that as an option presented to us. I'm not asking for the officers to come back to us with 25 different plans. Plan 1, variable across the whole network. Plan 2, variable across the whole network. I hope this is something that we've been quite clear about through this whole process, and that our submitters, or many submitters, made clear, and having read through these submissions, many people acknowledge that they would have an appetite for us to look at variable across the network. So I feel in the just the spirit of good planning, whether you agree we should have variable across the whole network or not, we should at least have the option in front of us, because the alternative is, if we only have variance as the option and we don't go for that, we will then delay this process by another month or 2 months or 3 months for officers to come back to us with that proposal, which will then end up in a situation where we lose out on our ability to access funding. So, in the spirit of good debate, in the spirit of accessing funding, I think it's sensible for us to look at all the options on the table, given that seems, from my reading submission, to be the will, we need to at least consider those 2 different alternatives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Finlay is the second. Do you wish to speak? Open it up. There are other speakers. Councillor Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I obviously support the original recommendation, but I support the additional one from Councillor Wood because I think we certainly have become clear through the submissions that there is an appetite for variable speed limits, even amongst those who oppose the permanent speed limit. And I do think it's going to be important for us in September to have enough options in front of us that we can pick an appropriate one to go with, rather than just not having an appetite perhaps. I don't know, I don't want to prejudice the decision, but you know, if we don't have an appetite for permanent speed limits across the whole network, and we don't have an alternative, that has been investigated, costed, that there's an implementation plan for. I mean, I accept that if we were to choose to go with variable speed limits, that the implementation might have to be staged across a long period of time. There might have to be prioritisation, and so that we could meet the 40% schools covered and so on. So I understand that these are compromises with that option, but I think it's important that that option is on the table, so that when it comes to decision making in September on the basis of submissions, we've got the full range of options ahead of us. And I understand that makes the report more complicated, and it may well be that officers don't recommend that particular course of action. But nevertheless, it will be important that we have sufficient information about that course of action, that should we as a council choose to go down that avenue, then we know what we're getting into. So I think it's very important that be included. And I would like to be sure that it's not just an all or nothing option. And I know the recommendation says across the entire 43 school areas in the proposed network, but that there is a practicable option coming forward that prioritises the money that's available according to the schools that should be prioritised. So just with that proviso, I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm also very happy to support both recommendations. I think that's where my line of questioning was coming from, was basically to have the options put in front of us, and that's where I was coming from with my questioning. Very happy with option recommendation 2. I think that so that we've got that put in front of us and we can make that decision in September. So very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor, for bringing this particular recommendation forward, because I think it does draw some things in focus for us. My questions around it really or around the specification, the entirety of the network. I think that kind of puts us on one end of a very, very long continuum. On the other end of that continuum, obviously, fixed speeds across all 43, et cetera, et cetera. My guess is that an optimal solution is somewhere in the middle there. And so while I'm prepared to support a look at this, I'm guessing and hoping that there is a solution that fits somewhere between those two extremes. And I would hope that the officers, while providing this, would also give us some other options that we can look at that would be better cost optimized, outcome optimized, as well as sense we need to apply into this space. Thank you.
Councillor, what on you for your right to reply for the second recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just letting listen to the discussion, thank you to my colleagues. It might be valuable if Councillor Finlay agrees to add at the end of that recommendation, including prioritisation, just so it's clear that we're not coming back with an option if we do it all this year or we do nothing this year. So it's clear that we recognise that this option will be more expensive and might need to include prioritisation, but that's what officers feel is necessary. And we'll have that discussion when we go there. So it will be appropriate just to add 43 school areas in the proposed network, including prioritisation options. I also want to say thank you to Councillor Barrett, and I agree, I'm not convinced that just variable or just permanent is the perfect solution, and I want to agree with Councillor Barrett says and say that in the report that comes to us, I would also be very interested to see what a hybrid solution or a hybrid model may look like. I'm not for another recommendation for us if we do that. I'm just going to take on good all the officers that heard this discussion, and I'll have some options for us around there as well. I thank you for debate and look forward to reading the report when it comes to us in September.
Thank you, Councillor. The additional to the recommendation, I think there's a will of the meeting. So the issue around that, I'm going to call for a vote. Are we ready to take them together? We will invite them.
This makes sense.
It's passed unanimously, 13 votes for and none against. We will now break for morning tea and we'll come back to the auditorium at 1:45 to reconvene. Kia ora koutou, we'll now reconvene our committee meeting. The next items that we'll consider are items 10 through to 15. And the next items 10 and 11, we're going to take together, and I'll call on Bryce Hoskins, our Group Manager for Property and Resource Recovery. The reason that we are taking these two together is that they need to be notified to the public after considered here, with the other ones that we can grant as a committee. So, Bryce, the floor is yours to speak to item 10 and 11. Just one more. Press the button, Bryce. There you go. Floor is yours.
Well, correct, that's good. Good morning, everyone. Yes, as Councillor Vincent's rightfully put out, the next two items are both essentially step one in the leasing process. I won't on that too much here, as we've done a number of them before, but essentially going out for public notification to see if there's any objections to entering into a new lease. In both cases, level 1 or 2 in the senior citizens are incumbents or being there fine. And essentially from there, if there are any submissions, the next stage would be to bring a report back to council to consider those and then ultimately a lease accordingly. So, hopefully that was read and any questions.
Open up. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Johnson.
You're on.
Thanks, Bryce. I assume that there's no shortcut to this, that this is the process that we have to go through.
Yes, essentially there is a process set out by the Reserves Act that we have to follow, and there's not any way to get around that. Equally, Council Support and Funding Policy sets out a pretty robust process around these kind of situations, and this is essentially following that process.
No further. Thank you, Bryce. No further questions. So I'll move the recommendations that are on page 133 in our order paper and 155 that pertain to these two items. Without reading each one through, I'll call for a seconder. Councillor Naylor, open it up. Any comments or debate? There being none, I'd now like to take these two items together and invite a vote. Everyone voted? It is passed unanimously, 13 votes for and none against. Now I'd like to invite Bryce back to present items 12, 13 and 14 as a tranche, which pertain to 16 Featherston Street, Tuckville Sports Incorporated, 117 Bogle Street, which is Whangareo Tiavina, and 14 is 21 Gifted Street Ashurst, which is the Ashurst Community Trust.
Again, to use my terminology from before, essentially this is the step 3 in this process. I guess the only point I would make is the second step would be for council to consider any submissions, and then the third step would be to grant these. In the first two, so Featherston Street and Bogle Street, there were no submissions, so we jumped straight to step 3. In the case of Ashurst, there was some submissions received. However, upon assessing those, considered pretty minor, sort of rolled steps 2 or 3 together into a single paper. Probably speaks to your point, Councillor Johnson, about expediting things. So, to take any questions.
If you open it up, if there are any questions. There being none, Bryce, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll move the recommendations that pertain to these items on page 183, 187 and 191. Call for a second, Councillor Naylor. Invite any indications to those wishing to comment or debate. There being none, I'd now like to invite a vote on all three items, items 12, 13 and 14. That is passed, 13 votes for and none against. That moves us to item 15, which is our committee work schedule. Invite our Chief Financial Officer to make any comments or updates. Nothing to add, open to questions. I guess I do have one. I just want to ensure that we have a rating review pending, and can I give an update that that is still intended to come to what committee will that come to?
Yes, through Chair, we tend to bring to workshop the, I guess, some scenarios and have some discussion about that, and that I believe is coming next week. And then after that, we will be bringing it back to this committee for council, whatever's more appropriate in terms of timing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, I'd like to move that the Strategy and Finance Committee receive the work schedule dated August 2023 and seconded by Councillor Naylor and invite a vote. That is passed, 30 votes for and none against. We will now take an adjournment for a long lunch, as the next item is a continuation of a hearing for the interim speed management plan. The submit is scheduled for 1:45, so that is when we'll reconvene at 1:45. And then following our hearing of submissions for Waterloo Park land exchange proposal, we'll commence at 2 o'clock, and they'll run through with the business for today. We're adjourning to 1:45.
Yeah, I'll be going.